So this session is all about our cities and how we're preparing our cities for the future. And I'll run through what we've got here because we've got some people with huge amounts of experience. Margot Orr Jones, who's the cities director at Jacobs. I read you were talking about new financing models earlier, and we've been talking about that all day, actually, so that's interesting. Isabel Dedring, who's now at Arup, but was Boris Johnson's Deputy Mayor for Transport. Claire Williams, Technical Director, Intelligent Mobility at Atkins. Claire's expertise is really about the humans and how humans interact with systems. Glyn Barton, Managing Director, Surface Transport for London, and London does tend to lead the way on these things. Dave Powell, Head of ITS Delivery at Cubic, and Mark Garrity, who's from Thales, Director of Strategy, Sales and Marketing. So please welcome them all. Thank you. I won't clap because the mic pops. But everyone's going to do a little 4 or 5 minutes now, and then we'll have a chat after that. So Margot, if you could kick us off.
So as I was introduced, I'm the cities director at Jacobs, and my background is strategic scale master planning. So mobility is incredibly important to me, and maybe a bit controversially as a master planner, transport and mobility is almost one of the most important aspects of a master plan. Because we know if we can move people around efficiently, that's good for the economy. If we can move people around with a real minimum of pollution, that's great for the environment. And if we can move people around affordably, that's fantastic for equity in our communities. And if we've got the 3 E's, equity, environment, and economy, we know we're doing it right. So that actually means mobility is quite a big deal. So we've got to get this right. So a couple of examples of what we're working on. First, efficiency, massively important. A really interesting survey that TfL did in central London told us that 1/3 of drivers that they surveyed moving around central London were looking for parking. That's 1/3, which is massive. So that's a really important issue. So we're working with Luton and GM to actually put together something that kind of coincides with the OnStar system to communicate with drivers in their cars to get them around congestion and to free parking spaces. Obviously a really important issue, considering 1/3 of the people in central London are actually looking for parking. We're also using live data that we're collecting from moving vehicles, working with Mercedes-Benz, to actually inform us on maintenance and safety issues on our roads. Now this is really exciting because that information used to be collected by surveys, people actually going out in trucks and surveying the roads and their maintenance requirements and safety requirements. And that takes a long time and it's quite expensive. And this method is almost free. So again, this is a huge impact. I get asked a lot about what the future is going to bring, especially in terms of mobility. And the only thing I know for certain, probably just like everybody else on the panel, is that the future is uncertain. But in our work, we do have to make projections and estimations in order to design things and innovate and try to predict the future. So a couple of things we're doing. We're working on a model that actually tests the scenario of having autonomous vehicles driving together with vehicles driven by people. And we all know this can be a tenuous situation. But actually, we found some really interesting results from this model that bring the human behavior into the context. We found that it takes only 10% autonomous vehicles to make the rest of the people-driven cars behave. With 10% autonomous vehicles, people start driving the speed limit and actually honoring traffic laws. And that really surprised me. I thought it would actually make things worse, but it made things better. In another project we're working on, we're looking at a road that you can drive on that will charge your electric car as you're driving. But obviously, in order to design that, we have to make projections into the future. How many electric cars will there be? What will the battery capacity be? How quickly will they charge? So what we found from this was that we actually need to be careful about what we wish for, because if all 30 million cars in the United Kingdom were electric, that would actually require a 25% uplift on the national grid. That's quite significant. Is that really what we want? Is that sustainable? So that brings me to the question, with all this focus on future mobility, should we really only be thinking about single-person vehicles? I actually think, as a proud urbanist, public transportation is the way to go. And the last example I'm going to give is a project I'm really proud of that we are working on with TfL called Project Edmund. And in Project Edmund, we're actually using big data to analyze how people are using the network in London. And that's not just Oyster card users using the underground trains and buses. We're also working with O2 and AECOM to help us monitor people that are walking and cycle journeys. So we're getting a proper end-to-end picture of how the London transport network is being used. And that allows TfL to focus their funding and focus their energy and resources on improving the network where it's needed most. So I love that project also because it's not just a physical solution, it's also just looking at a solution full stop. It doesn't need to be built, it doesn't need to be bricks and mortar to make things better. That's my 4 minutes.